and welcome to TV2's Front Porch Conversations, one in the series of interviews we're doing with members of the village to learn more about them and for you to learn more about your neighbors in hopes that you'll get together and meet new people. Today, as my guest, I have Terry Webb. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
And we're going to just sit like here and talk like we're on somebody's front porch. How's that?
Okay, that sounds great.
Good. Terry, tell me a little bit about yourself, and so those who are watching know about you.
I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania, and my folks went and moved from there to Ashtabula, Ohio, right on the northeastern side of Cleveland and in between Erie. And I lived there up until I joined the Navy.
And did you enjoy playing in the snow when you were growing up?
I loved it. We had a good time in the snow. I can remember going all the way up to my hips.
Oh my goodness!
Time. Yes.
Well, so then the Navy, you decided you wanted to volunteer for the Navy. I believe you said.
That's correct. I had a friend who joined the Navy a year earlier than I, and he loved it. He talked his dad into getting a GED, and so I asked my dad if he would let me sign up, and he did. And I got my GED pretty quick.
And what what was your age when you joined?
I joined at 17.
So you had to have
14 days after I was 17.
And did you ever regret that decision?
Never. I loved it.
I don't know a lot about the Navy, but I know that most people that I've talked to really enjoyed their service in the Navy.
I did. I've been all over, not all the way around the world, but almost. So where I lacked was I was on the ship, and two of us were on the ship with a crew, and the guy was going to relieve me just before they went to Perth, Australia. So I didn't get to Perth, but I got to Singapore before that.
Good. Well, tell me, you entered and you went into basic training?
Yes. I went into basic training at Great Lakes, and that's not very far from Chicago.
Mm-hmm. So you got to stay in the snow?
Oh, yes. Not really. It was pretty cold up there then, but, well, actually, it got cold before I finished. But other than that, it was kind of like what I'd been used to.
And from there, where did you get assigned?
From there, I went straight to North Island. North Island is in California. And I went to a squadron called VAW-11. It was actually an early warning squadron, where I was flying in AD-5Ws, and during that time, I was a radar operator, so that the forward controller could go ahead and see whatever he wanted to see through the radar and direct whatever he needed to direct from there.
Now, is radar used still as the main part of navigation?
It's part of it. There's a whole lot of navigation that goes on.
Mm-hmm. And more electronics are involved?
Oh, yes.
When you were joining?
Without a doubt.
And from there, where did the Navy send you?
From there, I went to, I made 2 cruises on the USS Kearsarge. Mm-hmm. And where I was flying in the ADs, something that some people... This aircraft had a big pregnant belly underneath it, which was where the radar antenna was. So they didn't often deck launch, which is starting back on the fantail and then putting full power to it until you took off. But we had lots of those, and that was a scary part. I remember one time we had been operating outside of California, in between San Clemente Island, and we were flying a midnight flight, and all of a sudden it got quiet. I mean, really quiet. The only thing we heard was pilots on the radio. And the pilot came back and he said, "Oh, I forgot to hit the main field thing. There's a little switch down here to the left of it, which he turned to get on main." And it was pretty quiet for a while. Well, when that happened, we blew a jug in the engine. So the engine spewed oil all over the place. And, of course, we were wearing poopy suits, which is a suit that you wear to keep from getting hypothermia. Anyway, so then the pilot landed in San Clemente, made a wrong turn to start with, and had to go around again. But I was sitting like that, ready to pull the latch for the canopy. And when he got out, he lifted up the thing for me and said, "Come on out, Terry, don't worry about it. There's a lot of oil, so don't slip."
Oh, my goodness. Well, you made a comment that taking off was kind of scary. I always thought landing would be scary, particularly on an aircraft
after
carrier.
a couple of times, it's not so scary. But
okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a new thing if you've never done it before.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I do know somebody who was a Navy pilot, and he landed on the wrong aircraft one time. He said that really gets you a lot of picking on.
Landed on the wrong carrier?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon. If you get out there and that's all you've got one carrier that you're looking at, and you think that's the right one, well, you can land on the wrong one.
Yeah, he said he wasn't the only person who ever did that, but he got a lot of ribbing about it from his buddies.
I'm sure he did, yeah.
And from there, where else have you served?
Let me finish that
I'm
story
sorry.
for just a second, because when we... I forgot what I was going to say, but that's okay. Let's go somewhere else.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Maybe that'll come back to you and we'll talk about it then.
Oh, I got a helicopter ride. That was what I was going to tell you. And the helicopter was an H-3 helicopter, and I had never been in one before. And son of a gun, this guy somehow hadn't cleaned up the oil. There was oil and hydraulic fluid all over where I was sitting, and it was very uncomfortable. And the noises from that helicopter were weird.
Yeah, I've never been in a helicopter, and that's not on my bucket list of things I want to do.
Since then, I have been again, but.
And there wasn't oil on the seat that time.
No, I was sitting in a seat that was actually there.
And then you served longer than that, and then maybe how many years total?
27 years. And from there, I went to Patuxent River, Maryland, to another squadron. And that squadron was a VR squadron. It was called VR-24. And when I was there, I volunteered to fly. And I'd already had my wings from the other squadron, but I volunteered to fly again. And this aircraft actually trailed the trailing wire behind it so that they could transmit to the fleet ballistic submarines. And we were able to, whenever we got the message from the president or whoever, we relayed that to the submarines. So they're always in contact with somebody.
Mm-hmm. Would you have liked to have been a submariner?
No. I've been aboard a sub, and the food is absolutely wonderful. You never tasted food like that. And they always had it. But, no, I would not like to be a submariner.
I've seen a plaque in somebody's home that says home is wherever the Navy says you are, where it is. So where else have they sent you?
When I went to Pax River, is that where I was?
Yes.
Is that what I was talking about?
Yes.
I left Pax River, and I had come home off a flight, and my wife said, "How would you like to go to Italy?" I said, "Sure." So we went to Italy. I went to Sigonella, Sicily first, and I was in a squadron there. And that was a squadron that had carrier onboard delivery, which was called a COD, and they delivered mail and passengers and whatever to the carrier so that they'd have the mail or whatever they needed.
When you're on a carrier, do they go out for a long period of time generally? Are there cruises?
The first cruise I was out for 7 months.
That's what I thought. But you do have time to go into ports and...
We actually went into port several times, but for the most part, you're at sea. Matter of fact, during my second cruise, I was in Atsugi, Japan, and we were playing basketball in one of the drill halls that they had, and we got an early call back to the carrier. So they sent a bus, picked us up, took us back to the airport, where we flew back down to the aircraft carrier, and we were headed to the Indian Ocean during the Vietnam conflict.
Oh, okay. And did you get that far? Did you go?
I flew over Hainan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was not scary, but you always wondered whether somebody was going to take a shot at you.
Well, I think that's a pretty natural feeling if you
sure
were
it
up
is.
in the air. And what was your rank?
I retired as a Chief Petty Officer. That's E7 for the Army folks, so they know.
Good. We'll translate for them, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then what was your position? What was your area of specialty?
I was an aviation electronics technician. I was not always able to, but pretty much able to fix anything on the airplane that broke. Electronics.
Mm-hmm. And those are important things for the aircraft.
Oh, yeah. So are the engines. And I had a lot of chances to change engines and props, the whole thing.
Well, you've retired in our conversation now.
Yes.
And retirement took you in a different sort of direction.
Actually, it was kind of the same thing, but I worked at a different place, and I worked with the FA-18 E&F program. I was actually doing the flight test and evaluation as quality assurance inspector.
And so you would see a lot of aircrafts, or would you see a lot of individual ones or a new style, for example?
I actually saw quite a few aircraft when I was in the Navy, all the way around. I saw lots of them. But I've actually flown only in AD-5Ws, the first place I went, and then I actually flew in VR-24. They had a VIP aircraft that took people, VIPs, wherever they wanted to go. And I got to fly in that one time. I was in maintenance control, which is where they direct all the maintenance for all the shops. And in comes the skipper. That's the captain of the squadron. And he said, "I need to go and take this airplane out for a check flight." I said, "Skipper, do you mind if I go with you?" He said, "No, come along, Chief." So I did. And that was an interesting trip because during the check flight, he had to do certain things. And during one of these things, I had a cup of coffee in my hand, and I was sitting in the jump seat, which is right behind the pilot and the co-pilot. And I had been for takeoff in one of the seats, but he called me up to sit in the jump seat. Here's my coffee. And he said, "Hang on, Chief, don't spill your coffee." And he did a roll. And never spilled a drop.
Wow.
He had positive G's on the aircraft the whole time. He's obviously done that
Yes.
before.
Probably like to shock people as he could do his trick.
I wasn't shocked, but I was surprised when he did it.
And then later, you actually retired as a civilian as well.
Right, where I was working as the quality assurance. I was actually in a squadron that they called it Strike Aircraft Test Directorate. And we did a lot of testing for electronics, period. Mm-hmm. And I had lots of times had gone to companies that made stuff for the Navy and actually directed them what to do. Now, that's a pretty important thing. That was probably the highlight of my career.
And you were able to probably make some positive changes for the Navy in their equipment they got from doing that.
I think so, yes. Because, when you're in the Navy in electronics, you don't really have an input to say something. Well, I did then.
But you had all that experience of knowing what needed to be done.
Exactly.
And a number of people who, as they retire from military, go into a similar field, and where they can use what they learned there.
That's exactly what happened. I didn't know much about test and evaluation, but I learned quick. I had a boss that actually ended up being my best friend. Probably unusual, but he was a golfer, mm-hmm. and that was where we actually got together, was golfing. We made several trips from Pax River all the way down to Florida, mm-hmm. South Carolina, just to play in what they called the World Amateur Handicap Tournament. And he actually went like 20 times, and they only have it once a year. So you have to sign up early and play good.
And it sounds like you did.
It was a lot of fun.
And do you have to qualify then to be in it?
No, it's all handicap, so you go in with what your handicap is, and you try to better it all the time. Matter of fact, when I first got to Pax River, that was where I had been earlier. And when I got back there again, after I'd retired, I played golf. And I actually ended up being, at 54, the club champion there at the golf course. And that was pretty nice. I got a set of golf clubs and a bag for that, but
and bragging.
Pretty nice.
And you got bragging rights.
I did have.
Yes.
I tried to get a parking spot, but they wouldn't give me one.
What's your favorite golf course you've ever played?
Oh, boy. Probably in Myrtle Beach, a place called Heather Glen, and that actually had heather on it and lots of woods and stuff, but it was a wonderful golf course.
And was it on the ocean or near the ocean?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it was on kind of swamp, but that's what South Carolina is.
What other particular interests do you have? I know you've talked about golf.
I've always wanted to go on an air balloon ride. But lately I think I've changed my mind. I've thought about jumping out of an airplane and doing that stuff, but I've chickened out. The older I get, the more I think that it's probably not a smart thing to do.
Go with your gut. If that's the way you feel, that's probably a good direction. After your retirement, you and your wife did some traveling, and
we did. We actually had bought a travel trailer to start with. It was a 25-foot slide out, and then we thought about getting a fifth wheel, but we didn't. And we did get a motorhome. And the motorhome was just really nice. I mean, I could be driving and she could fix a lunch or whatever. I couldn't sit down and eat it with her, but anyway, that's kind of what we did. We loved it. We saw a lot of the country.
If you could visit one of the places again that you did in your motorhome traveling, where would you go to again?
Oh boy. I loved Georgia. We camped a couple of times in Georgia. I forget what they were now, but I liked Georgia.
Is that like North Georgia in the mountains or other?
No, but actually we were in Tennessee at the time when we had the motorhome, and we did a lot of camping there, visiting several different campgrounds. We did a lot of camping in North Carolina, wherever we could. It wasn't very far from home, but it was far enough away to where we could go and have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say something else too, but I forgot what it was.
We'll come back to it when you remember.
Okay.
And then you came to Advent Christian Village. How did that happen?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. Not very long, but I had looked at the Veterans VA to try and find a place to live. And during that time, I came across on the internet a place called A Place for Moms. And I called them and talked to them, and the lady that I talked to actually found some places, but it doesn't happen to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was looking at the VA, my son's wife said, "Terry, why don't you come to this place that my daughter used to work at and see what you think?" She said, "It's much better than you would like the VA."
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, and that happened to be here. I'd never been here before, but I kind of like it. It's different. I was really concerned when all I saw was scooters and wheelchairs and stuff like that. And I said, someday you might be in one of those. So just have sympathy for those that are there.
Mm-hmm. And know that you can be here with that too. So
exactly.
I think that's one of the nice things about the village is there's a level of services and care for everybody in whatever state.
Are you talking ACV?
Yes.
Yeah.
And since you've been at ACV, how have you been involved in the community? What?
I did work for some time at Copeland Community Center, which is a place where you can have activities like a swimming pool or use machines that they have there, or just exercise. They have a jacuzzi as well as the swimming pool. The swimming pool is always 82 degrees. It's just a nice function. And I worked there for about 2 years, and then I decided I didn't need to work anymore.
Okay. Just looking around us, we have a beautiful view behind us.
Yes, we do.
And do you enjoy being outdoors? And
oh, yes. Matter of fact, I thought about moving to right next door to a friend who happens to be blind, and somebody moved out right next to him. So I thought about moving, and the move just isn't in me.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to move again.
Well, you can make choices.
Yeah.
You have choices to make.
Exactly.
If you could do something on your bucket list, what would you do? You kind of rolled out the hot air balloon and jumping out of the airplane.
Right. I would like to play golf again, but I broke my arm, so I can't golf anymore, but I'd like to try it again.
There's a golf course in Lake City and Live Oak, I know,
Right.
and in Madison.
I've played both of them.
Have you?
When I was better. And so my son's a golfer. And to see him hit the golf ball, it makes me cringe. Because he's a youngster and he can just hit it far and straight. And he loves golf.
Are there some things that we haven't talked about you would like to share?
There's probably a lot of things that I just can't think of right now, but I loved the Navy. It was my life. Anyway.
Well, Terry, I'm always very appreciative when I talk to people who have had military service. I thank you for that service.
Well, thank you. You're welcome.
But I always learn so much from, and I have from you today, and that's a gift, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
And come back and talk to us again sometime.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
It's nice visiting with you. You're welcome. And thank you so much for tuning in. Look for future episodes that'll be shown on TV too. Thanks for watching today.